Hey, welcome back to the differences between Shenmue the Animation and Shenmue the Games. We're going to go over episode 12, and then there's one more episode to go over, which is basically the season finale, hoping that it's the season finale and that it gets a season 2. This is Magnus, and if you like to talk about Shenmue or video games in general, please consider subscribing to my channel. But we've been going over the past few weeks the differences between Shenmue the Animation and Shenmue the video games. Spoiler alert for the entire Shenmue series as well as episode 12 as usual. And I will say that this is recorded a bit late because it took me, as usual, a long time to look at all the references and of course put this video together just for you guys. So episode 13, the season finale, will be compared to, by next week, I'm already working on that as well, non-stop, got to get these videos out to you. And I saw episode 13 and oh my gosh, that one brought me to tears. So definitely check out next week when I have that final comparison, and then we'll go from there. But without further ado, let's compare the differences between episode 12 of the animation and the Shenmue video games. Here we go. So in this first series of shots, it's almost like a previously in Shenmue, which shows Wong catching up to Joy on her bike, and then it shows Ryo and Ren going up to the 12th floor and then not finding anything, and then of course getting caught by Dan Yu, and then right there the intro starts. Now none of these scenes are really in the video game, so it's just a previously on Shenmue, and I covered what happened in these scenes in the previous episode 11 comparison, so check that out if you want to see the details in that. Moving on. Now in this next scene, it's continuing on the conversation between Joy and Wong. Now Joy is like, what are you doing and why are these guys after you? And Wong's like, we gotta help Ryo and Ren because they're in trouble and we gotta do something about it. And Joy's like, I told you, this is not going to work. They're too powerful. We can't mess with them. Wong gets off the bike and he's like, you know what? My entire life I've been struggling, basically just stealing, and just because I would steal one day didn't guarantee me that I'd have what I need for the next day. And this is how I lived my life, and I'm tired of living that way. And when I met Ryo taught me that you can live with a purpose, and I feel that if I help Ryo, I will be able to have that purpose and change my life. And that's what Wong wanted to do. And Joy kind of felt bad. You could see that in her eyes, but Wong was just like determined. So he was off. Now this is completely original to the games, but it's adding some context to story that we didn't really see in the video games and we needed more information on. Moving on. Now we're back at the Yellowhead building where Dan Yu found Ren and Ryo. They decide to run because they're like, we can't deal with this guy right now. So when they run, they cross this plank that basically leads them to the other side of the building, and Dan Yu is chasing them. Ren goes first, and then Ryo goes, and right before Dan Yu is able to catch up to them and follow them, Ren kicks over the board, and he's like, stupid Dan Yu, and he can't chase them. Now this scene in particular is in the video games, but slightly different. When Ryo's climbing floors in the Yellowhead building with Ren, they come across this plank, and Ren goes first, just like the animation, and then when Ryo's about to go, out of nowhere, that's when Dan Yu's like, I got you, and then he starts to chase them. So as Ryo, you gotta make sure you don't fall off the plank, and then, just like the animation, Ren kicks over the board, and Dan Yu can't chase them. So you could see the similarities there, but the animation had it connected a little bit more to why you were getting chased by Dan Yu at that point. Moving on. So in this scene, Joy's having flashbacks with Ryo on her mind because she's outside the come over guest house. That's where she used to meet up with Ryo, and then she just starts to feel bad. From there, that's when members of the Yellowhead find her and she skids away. Now with all this guilt that she's feeling, she finds Wong and then she picks him up. And then Wong's like, hey, did you change your mind? And she's like, no, I didn't change my mind. It's because of you that they're chasing me now. So then she decides to take him to the Yellowhead building. But then she's like, we got to come up with a plan. So you're going to be my little brother. He's like, what? She's like, trust me. And a funny thing that happens is one of the members of the Yellowhead steal a bicycle just to be able to chase them, which I thought was hilarious. Again, none of this is in the video games, but it's adding context that we needed to the games. Moving on. So Ren and Ryo escape from Dan Yu, but as they're climbing up the stairs, they run into Yuan with a chainsaw. Yuan then radios in and he mentions that he found these rats and he starts to chase them with the chainsaw. Now Ren and Ryo hightail it out of there, and then the couple of Yellowhead members get in their way. They kick them over and they keep running. Now right before they're able to get away, Ryo kicks over a support beam that drops in front of Yuan, knocking him out, blocking his way to pursue them, and of course Yuan's trapped and can't chase them. These scenes play out almost exactly the way that it plays out in the animation, in the video games. Yuan finds them, Yuan calls it in the radio, then Yuan chases them. The difference though here is that in the game, you actually fight a few more Yellowhead members and go through a few obstacles before you're able to completely get away from Yuan by kicking the support beam. So that still happens. Ryo kicks the support beam in both cases, and it's pretty close to the games, which is cool. Next up. Now this next scene is pretty quick. It shows Joy and Wong arriving at the Yellowhead building. And as they run in, they want to try to get in, but how are they going to get in? Well, Joy admits that she's Chun's daughter from the white tie, something that Wong had no idea was actually true. So when that happens, the Yellowhead members are shocked that Chun's daughter is right there at their door. Now, previously in another episode, it was speculated that Chun's daughter could have been Shu Ying, but it wasn't. The series did actually hint to the fact that Choi was Chun's daughter, and this actually confirms that fact. So it's not Shu Ying, it's Joy, and it makes perfect sense. And that whole scene was completely original. Moving on. Now this next quick scene shows Yuan actually being found by Dan Yu, and Yuan's grateful for being saved. And then Yuan gets a radio call that's saying, oh, we're in trouble, we got a situation. So Yuan's like, what's going on? And none of that is in the games as well. Again, it's just building story, building a lot of original content, which is exciting to see. Moving on. Jumping into this next original scene, again, not in the games, you see Joy and Wong sitting in a room because they were taken up there by the Yellowhead members. And Wong's pretty much wondering, how were you connected to Chun? And he re-explains the story of the white tie and what happened. And then Joy says, I don't need a history lesson. You just need to figure out a way to snoop around. But he's like, what if I get caught? And she's like, well, there's more than one way to snoop around. And they look at the vent, because the vent is the way to snoop around. Completely original to this series, but it's useful. Moving on. Next up, Danyu and Yuan get a radio call that they've got Chun's daughter. And then when Danyu hears this, he's like, okay. And Yuan freaks out because Yuan is thinking they're here to sabotage our deal with Lan Di. But Danyu's like, you know what? If that's the case, lock her in the basement. So that means basically Joy's going to get locked in the basement. We move on to see Ryo and Ren just kind of running around. And then they hear the radio call that they're going to lock up Chun's daughter in the basement. At this point, Ryo's like, what's going on? And Ren's like, I know Chun's daughter, and she's here. It's Joy. And that makes them both determined to go to the basement and rescue Joy, which is pretty cool. Slightly different from the game, but I'll get into how it's different a bit later. So in this scene, it shows Joy by herself because Wong actually escaped through the vents, and the Yellowhead members walk in because they're going to listen to Danyu and take her to the basement. They're asking, where did your little brother go? And she's like, I don't know. He went to take a piss or something. Then they tried to grab her because she was trying to get smart with them. And she obviously is easily able to defend herself. At that point, Master Baihu walks in and he's like, let him go. And she's like, what if I don't feel like it? Master Baihu quickly runs in and knocks Joy out with one blow. And then they proceed to take her to the basement. Now, this scene doesn't take place in the video games, but none of what the reason was for Joy to get captured was in the actual video games. She was just captured. So all of this can be considered canon, in my opinion, when it comes to Joy getting captured, Master Baihu having her in the basement. Pretty cool. But, like I said, not in the video games, but it gives context. Now, quickly moving on, we see Ren and Ryo make haste to the basement because they want to find Joy. Meanwhile, you have Wong going through the vents looking for, clues or whereabouts of their friends, when he happens to fall through a vent where he finds Yonder Zoo. Now, he doesn't realize it's Yonder Zoo at first until Yonder Zoo tells him, I'm Yonder Zoo. But then they hear rustling outside because Yuan is about to actually walk in the room to see what's going on after she hears a noise. Wong is able to successfully hide in the vents again, so Yuan doesn't find him and the Yellowhead members don't see Wong at all. And they're basically going to take Yonder Zoo out at this moment and bring him to Landi for the meeting. However, when Wong realizes this, he wants to save Yonder Zoo. So when he sees the rats in the vents, he lights a match that makes all the rats land on top of Yuan, freaking him out, and he runs out of the room in a panic. At that point, Wong takes the opportunity to grab Yonder Zoo and roll him out of the room. Now, none of this also happens in the games, but it's adding stuff that we never saw before to the lore of Shenmue, which is pretty cool. Now, this next scene is pretty exciting. Ryo and Ren finally make it to the basement where the Yellowhead members are holding Joy captive. Now, right as they're about to all get into a fight, Master Baihu walks in and he's like, no, if you can defeat me, I'll let you have the girl. And at that point, Ryo steps up and he's like, let's go, basically. He's ready to go. And they start to fight. And now in this fight, Ryo starts having flashbacks of all of the four voodoo. All of that's in his mind because all of this is coming together at this moment. And this is a moment that matters. He's got to save his friend Joy. Now he punches Master Baihu first, which Master Baihu blocks. They go for a couple of moves back and forth, but none of them really hit each other until Ryo lands a kick that knocks Master Baihu out. At that point, Master Baihu's defeated and he can take Joy. But then Master Baihu gets up a little bit and he's like, what's your name? And he's like, Ryo Hazuki. And then he's like, I won't forget that name. At that point, they get to have Joy. Now, the games is slightly different because to get to Master Baihu, Ryo actually goes down by himself because Ren parted ways with Ryo earlier on when he was actually taking care of a few Yellowhead members while Ryo searched for keys to go down to the basement. Ryo's purpose of going down to the basement was to make it up to the 40th floor. And the elevators in the Yellowhead building only let you go to certain floors. So the only one that let you go up to the 40th floor was an elevator from the basement. So when he goes down to the basement to get to that elevator, he sees Joy captured by Master Baihu and he's like, you can have her if you can beat me. Same situation, and they fight in a cage rather than just in the basement, which was pretty cool. I like that cage fight in the games. But the scene then plays out similarly where when Ryo wins, Master Baihu's like, what's your name? Ryo Hazuki, I shall remember that name. So that's pretty cool. But difference here also is that we had no context in the video games as to why Joy was captured or why she was there. It was just, she was there, you gotta save her out of nowhere. And Ren was not there, like I said, because he was helping distract some Yellowhead members so that Ryo can go to the basement. Moving on. So in this next completely original scene, we see that Yellowhead member on the bicycle make it to the Yellowhead building, and then the other guys actually arrived in a car, and he's like, what the, you guys had a car? Then he goes up and makes it up to Yuan, and he's like, Yuan, what happened? And Yuan's like, oh, I've got all these rats. And he's like, well, where's Zoo? Where's Yonder Zoo? So he runs in to see where Yonder Zoo is at, and Yonder Zoo is gone. None of that happens in the game. Moving on. So Ryo and Ren then wake up Joy, and they ask her, why are you here? And she was like, why am I here? To save you guys. And she's like, where's Wong? And then they overhear on the radio that Wong is escaped with Yonder Zoo. And they're like, oh my goodness. Now the games is slightly different when it comes to this scene because Ryo wakes up Joy by himself. Ren is not there. And they don't talk about why she's there until they get into the elevator to go up to the 40th floor. Ryo asks Joy, why are you here? And again, she was like, why am I here? I was here to save you. But we never got any context as to why she was there to save him or what happened to her that got her captured. And then she tells you immediately that Wong was taken up to the 40th floor. It's just them two in the elevator going up to the 40th floor. So she knew where Wong was and that Wong was captured at this point. But in the animation, she had no idea where Wong was. So that's pretty different. And of course, Ren wasn't there. Moving on, we see Wong running with Yonder Zoo. And this never happened in the video games. So we didn't see that they were actually together. And then there's one Yellowhead member that has been chasing Wong this whole time. Finally see him there. And Yonder Zoo's like, run faster. I got this. Yonder Zoo knocks him out. And they keep running towards an elevator, which looks like they're finally going to escape. But then out of the elevator, Dan Yu makes an appearance. And he's got them. None of this was in the video game, but then it added context as to how Wong got captured by Dan Yu, which was pretty important to the series. Now, in the video games, none of this context happened, but somehow Joy knew that Wong was captured. Some of this might not be canon or can't be considered canon, because how would Joy know that Wong was captured and taken up to the 40th floor? Who knows? A little bit of a mystery. Moving on. So now this next scene has a few differences between the games and the animation. Rio, Joy, and Ren are running back upstairs to find Wong and wherever they might be. And when they're doing that, they run into Yuan once again. Yuan sporting a knife and starts to attack Rio and Ren. Now they handle Yuan quickly and kick him into the elevator. Now in this first step, there's a couple of differences. Rio is with Ren in this scene when it's happening, and instead of sporting a knife, Yuan still has the chainsaw that he was chasing them with. Now they kick him into the elevator and then they want to start to interrogate him. Now in the animation, Joy, Rio, and Ren start to interrogate him, and he's very resistant to any interrogation until Ren comes and brings the trash can. And then pretty quickly he confesses that, you know what, they're taken up to the roof. Now the difference here is Joy is not in this scene. It's just Ren and Rio. And when Ren brings out the trash can, rather than say that they're on the roof, Yuan says that they're on the 40th floor. And to get to the 40th floor, you need a key that's on the 18th floor to be able to activate the elevator to go up to the 40th floor. So it's a little bit more intricate in the video game because they want to, of course, prolong your trip to the roof. So like we've seen from most of the animation, they just take you directly to the spots you need to go rather than making you do all these side missions. Makes a lot of sense. And then, of course, in both the animation and the video game, Ren kicks the trash into Yuan, and then Yuan's all disgusted, and the elevator goes down. Pretty cool that it happens in both. Moving on. Now, in this final scene, we see Rio, Ren, and Joy run up to the roof, and right there, Rio makes it out to the roof, and then he sees Lan Di up in the helicopter, and he's like, Lan Di! Such an epic moment. And that's where the animation ends. Now that's pretty quick when compared to the video games, because in the video games, Rio's with Joy, and they both are in what seems to be like the main base of operations for Dan Yu. When they go into a room which looks like it's Dan Yu's office, Rio confronts a bunch of members of the Chiyu men, beats them up, goes out a side window by himself to beat up a few more and then make it to the roof. When he makes it to the roof, of course, because the game had to prolong some of the gameplay, we see Rio look at, on a helicopter, Lan Di. And it's from there on, it's pretty similar. He's like, Lan Di. So they both end, at least at that point, pretty similarly with those slight differences in the video game. And that's it. So what did you think of episode 12? Now, episode 13 is coming up. It's already aired. I've seen it. It made me cry. I gotta be totally honest, but we'll do the comparisons in episode 13 next week, and you'll see all of the differences. And then that's it. That pretty much wraps up all of the differences in the entire series. If you want to see all of the previous episodes that I've done, where I broke out each one episode per episode, check out the rest of the videos on my channel. And as always, thank you, and you can make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. Hit that like button and comment. See you next time.